Peter. Do you want to introduce yourself really quick? Who are you?
Okay, so my name is Damali Anderson. I'm from California, or Southern California. I grew up in Torrance and Redondo Beach. Where I lived is a small city right outside of Torrance, which is called Gardena. It's kind of like a hood. So I grew up there. For me, I wanted to have a conversation because I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily talking outside of their race, and they're not necessarily, I haven't seen anybody talking uh, to their friends and wanting to know their perspective, like how are they feeling, maybe some of the reasons why they felt apprehensive to ask questions or to do something, or why they haven't done anything. And I feel like you can bring more bees with honey
Hmm.
than being super
Whoa.
aggressive.
Wow. Hey, wow. Look at that's cool. I've never heard that before. Yeah. Would you mind if I asked you like how I know you talked about your brother and maybe some of your friends on Twitter, like they've
Yeah,
had
like how they
different
felt.
responses. Like what are some of the different kind of like responses you've seen or their perspectives?
Well, for my mom, she was born in 1953. So she lived through the civil rights. She lived afterwards. Then she had kids who were, um, they experienced the 92 riots. Uh, and then even during her time, her mom was kind of afraid that she would, uh, she's kind of like a radical thinker. And her mom was a little bit fearful that she might join the Black Panther Party. But um, I believe a big portion of why she didn't was the whole, like, sometimes it's enemies necessary to get your point across,
Mm.
and that clashed with our belief system. You know, we're not supposed to do violence, and it's really not our judgment. So anytime you're trying to fight evil, it has to be with compassion and love. So I think that's why she personally never joined. But it doesn't mean she didn't feel angered by what was going on back then, or when her kids were, became teenagers and so forth and so on. So this is kind of my version, my time for like a civil rights movement in a way, and feeling a certain way. I think about, if I had screwed up, would I want to be treated that way? Would I want to have someone, mess up my property or be aggressive with me? Or would I want someone to come to me first calmly and say, hey, you should stop, or give me a warning? Afterwards, that's your choice if you choose not to listen.
Yeah.
My mom, it kind of stir her up. Is she's
Mm.
like, getting like reminiscing, and she's like, you know what, history's just repeating itself. And she like really started praying.
Mm.
When the riot started happening, we were like super emotional in the
Yeah.
house. The energy was pretty crazy, and I have to admit, like, a part of me sort of felt like I understood, like, I wouldn't have been a part of the riot, but I did understand it, and I felt the anger. We're a lot more diverse in our country than we were back then. So a lot of us are friends with other nationalities. A lot of us are family members with other
Sure.
nationalities. So I think we're taking into consideration
Mm.
that that's my brother, my girlfriend, or
Mm.
my
Huh.
son. A lot of us are really a melting pot.
Yeah. People keep saying like, well, let's keep the momentum. Let's not just let it be like a 2-week thing and then everybody forget
Yeah.
about it. So like, I don't know,
Yeah.
like, how are you feeling about it now? How do your family feel about what's going on?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of stuff is still happening, even though we're protesting. So that kind of makes people angry. And so like those types of things, like I'm kind of tired of seeing it. I'm tired of we having to remember all the names. Like it's very emotionally draining. However, I feel like I can't turn away from it because I don't want the momentum to stop.
Sure.
This is a like kind of like a social or systematic reset, right? We got to reset how we work in certain institutions, the
Yeah.
workplace, law enforcement, political, all that stuff. We
Yeah.
have to like reset the whole thing. And then also
Faith is an important part. Would you mind sharing like what aspect that I guess, helps shape your perspective or how you react?
hmm And so I've kind of been feeling for a minute like I didn't want to have the Christian title, but I wanted to be a follower of Jesus Christ. So, and I feel like and that's another thing that's like, I kind of go elsewhere. I, for one, I am a follower of Jesus, hands down. That is where I am. I kind of feel like, and then like it's so much. It's like so much into. It's so much like like we're supposed to view what he does. He's the
Yeah.
example, and there's not too many of us that can say we've done that.
Yeah.
That is speaking right now,
Mm.
which is pretty scary. So when I feel like I want to hold a grudge, and you don't want it to be a black versus white thing, but sometimes people say things and it gets you in there. It can trigger you. It could put that battery in your back. And I have faith to kind of hold that back and say, no, you can't do that.
Sure.
That's not what you're supposed to do. And I've had to kind of tell some of my friends, like, just because I'm saying we need to have a conversation, and just because I'm telling you that that's not what God would want us to do, doesn't mean I'm not angry.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that. I'm just saying how y'all are going about it. That's not right. We can't do that.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you would encourage us to do to educate ourselves or to just kind of grow in perspective. Like, what are some things we should be doing to your, yeah.
Well, for my non-Black people who are just average Joes, I would say learn Black history. It's basically American history, honestly. I feel it's weird that we separate it, but it really is just American history. We literally we built this land. Our blood and sweat is in the soil, is in the oil, in the soil, in the trees, everything. Like, I think you should learn that. If you learn it through music, it's in the music. Learn it through cinema, inventors. Like, a lot of the stuff has been literally wiped out of history, where people kind of paint Black people as like stupid and criminals and drug addicts, and it's terrible when like, I personally would say just educate yourself.
Yeah.
Hear our stories, read our stories. If you don't like reading, watch our videos. You don't have to watch all of them, but just be educated in it.
Yeah.
And then for my non-Black friends who are Christians, I would say also really study and read the Word, because I don't feel I feel there's a lack of compassion. There's a lot of excuse as to why people feel like they deserved it.
Wow.
You know, and well, if like, who was it? I think his name is Tamir Rice. It was a young Black kid who was at a park, and he was gunned down just for having a Nerf gun. And that's really sad. Like, so are you telling me that if your kid had a Nerf, he should be gunned down?
Sure. Are there things that you wish people would ask you? Maybe like non-Black friends would ask you, but for whatever reason, uncomfortable to ask you, and you kind of wish, hey, I wish you would ask me this.
The people who kind of picked on me and made fun of me were Black people. So I said, well, I can understand if there are people who are mean and who are racist, but are you telling me everyone is? Like, everyone's not going to have my back? Not, there's not going to be someone who's going to care how I'm feeling. So for me, I would say, if you're uncomfortable, first just ask them, how you doing?
Yeah.
Are you okay today? How are you?
Yeah.
Like, it's only the small stuff. It really is. I'm sure other people could feel like it's like this whole list.
Yeah.
But then, like, ask genuinely too. Genuinely ask me how I'm doing and care. Won't know until you ask. And so I'm all for it for conversation. I'm all for it for asking questions, which is interesting because I really don't like to talk. I get really nervous. But I always tell people I have a contradiction, and one of them has to win. Either I'm going to be shy and not say anything, but also be frustrated of the misunderstanding. And I hate misunderstandings. And so I was like, you know what? You can't be shy. You just got to just go out there and just ask. And I was a bit nervous because I did want to ask. But how do I ask? So did you hear what's on the news? Of course we did. So how do you feel about this? Like, how do I go about it? Let me just ask. And I think a lot of us have to think about that. Like, okay, I'm your friend, or I go to school with you, or I go to church with you. Like, we always sit here. We're always working together. Hey, how you doing? Like, just do that. Or like when you see someone and you see them all the time, you may not be friends with them. You may just only say hi by passing by, but you may notice that they have a cast on. You say, oh my God, what happened to your arm? It's just that simple. And yet when something is weird, because when something happens racially, we just feel like kind of awkward and uncomfortable. And we're like, what do we do? But we have to now. Well, I'm thinking it would get better as generations go on. You know, it seems like we have our moments of eruptions every couple of decades, you know. But hopefully I'm thinking about how when I grow up, I want to be comfortable in society. And I'm also thinking about when my kids, if I have kids, I need them to have a better future than what I had, you know what I mean? So I think that's another big thing about the protests. You guys start thinking about the future. You don't want your kids, you're going to be old. You can't be chasing them around. Stop it. Don't do that. Or leave my son alone. You can't do that. So you're going to be old. You're not going to be running around. So you got to do it now while you got the energy. And while you're not totally jaded off of your own experience. Because a lot of people are jaded from their experience, and they're just not hearing anybody. But we aren't sharing this planet by ourselves. We're not sharing this nation by ourselves. So it's very silly to only want an echo and not have a conversation.
That's good. Well, hey, for somebody that doesn't like public speaking, you're very articulate, and I think you have a lot of good thoughts and words to share. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your heart. Like, I can feel your emotion and your honesty. And I know this will be hopefully an ongoing conversation, because, I definitely want to learn more from you, and maybe my youth will too. So I'll keep
Hopefully.